Okay. Hello guys, how are we all doing? Welcome back to yet another video, folks. Today it's the final prediction of the Premier League Week 38. The players are back. The title race has wrapped up as the relegation wrapped up as well. So all eyes on those Champions League spots. We know Liverpool and Arsenal are already guaranteed their places. Who will join out of Man City, Newcastle, Aston Villa, Chelsea and Nottingham Forest? We're about to find out. What a season, folks. Thank you for all so much support for this video, folks. Before you get into the YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button and thumbs up. And I got 22 or 23 subscribers on YouTube. Let's keep that going. Right. Let's start with Bournemouth versus Leicester, with nothing to play for. FC Bournemouth have now officially missed out on European football this season, but as the Cherries welcome an already relegated Leicester City at the Vitality Stadium on the final day, FC Bournemouth still have a slim chance of a top 8 finish and potential European qualification this season, but the Cherries have instead suffered a defeat to Manchester City to end their Premier League campaign, just as they did in the FA Cup quarter-finals in March. Bournemouth weren't at it at all at the Etihad Stadium in midweek, with an excellent Omar Mamush goal being followed by strikes from Bernardo Silva and Nico Gotzalo to give City a comfortable win before a late Daniel Gibson's consolation for Adado Alera's side. As for Leicester City are going down, but they aren't necessarily going down with a whimper, but as Ruben Vassanosseri's Foxes coming into this one on the back of a collecting 7 points from their last 3 matches. A 2-2 draw with a top 5 chase in Nottingham Forest have been sandwiched by victories at the King Power Stadium against fellow relegated side Ipswich Town and Southampton. Jamie Vardy scored in the last week's win over Ipswich, his 200th goal and his 500th and final Leicester match. Right, FC Bournemouth could well be heading into the summer of change, with Dean Howson set to depart for Real Madrid, and many others being linked by move away, but as well as Andala Aleo. But they face a Leicester City side that they are finishing with a bit of a pride, but they will likely to try and take the game to their potential. An unmotivated opposition down on the south coast, both teams scoring in a fun to watch, would appear a good bet for this one. I'm going for Bournemouth to win 2-1 and win it on a high. Right, Fulham versus Man City. Fulham have had their hopes of a top 8 finish and ended since they last played, as the impostures sneaked to deny Manchester City potential Champions League qualification on the final day. On Monday evening, Brighton Hove Albion scored an 85th minute winner against champions Liverpool via Jack Hinshelwood, and to mean that Fulham can now no longer catch the Seagulls in the top 8 and European spots on the final day of the season. That is a shame for Fulham after an inconsistent run of form. That continued with a comfortable come from behind a win in the West London derby at the G-Tech Community Stadium last weekend, in a game which Fulham defeated Brentford by 3-2. As for Man City, last weekend it was confirmed that Manchester City will end the 2024-25 season without a trophy, as they were beaten Crystal Palace by 1-0 at Wembley Stadium in a controversial FA Cup final that left Pep Guardiola fuming at the end of the game. However, they still salvage a top 5 finish and Champions League qualification with the avoidance of a defeat on the final day of the season, after they comfortably defeated FC Bournemouth by 3-1 at the Etihad Stadium in midweek. Fulham with little to play for, but want to achieve that top half finish and finish their season with a flourish. But they have been able to get bigger teams this season, especially at Craven Cottage, defeating my team Liverpool in West London last month, but they now face a Manchester City side. They have been suspectable at the back of, throughout the campaign, even conceding to Bournemouth on what was a very one-sided affair. And they should still give themselves over the line in a potential entertaining clash at Craven Cottage. I think Fulham will get a goal, but Man City will be too strong, 3-1, and put their place in the Champions League for next season. Right, let's move on to Wolverhampton Wanderers versus Brentford. Wolverhampton Wanderers may well be on the bench ahead of the final day of the season, while as Brentford have a chance of a top 8 finish and European qualification this weekend. Wolverhampton Wanderers coming into this one of a 4-2 defeat to FA Cup champions Crystal Palace in midweek, with goals from Emmanuel Ndalo and Jordan Strand-Larsen proven to be fruitless due to Eddie Nketiah Brave, as well as Ben Chilwell and Mujay Eze goals. But Wolves have been much improved and generally impressive since the appointment of former Porto boss Victor Piore in mid-December, but the hosts heading into the final day of visit Palace on the back of 3 successive defeats in the Premier League. But if Brentford's West London rivals win the Europa Conference League against Real Biters in Warsaw in Poland in midweek, but finish 7th in the Premier League, then 8th in the Premier League, will qualify for next season's Europa Conference League. Brentford have put themselves into a pole position for that possibility with 4 successive victories, but the Bees now coming into this one of a 3-2 defeat to Fulham at the G-Tech Community Stadium in a game which they led 2-0 with just over 20 minutes to go. Victor Piore is known by being particularly Portuguese coach, but being viewed as the safety first coach. However, with the survival secured, even when striving to do so, they have often been quite entertaining to watch in the last few months. Brentford's 37 Premier League matches have been produced a remarkable 121 goals this season, while as the favourites given their added motivation to try and catch Brighton & Hove Albion. A fun away win would appear to be the best one for this one. I'm going for Brentford to win 2-1. Right. Let's move on to Southampton versus Arsenal. Yeah, Southampton versus Arsenal. Yeah. Right. Southampton have avoided being the worst Premier League team, the worst team in the Premier League history, but it still has been a miserable campaign as the welcome runner-ups Arsenal to St Mary's on the final day. In the 37 matches so far this season, Southampton have managed just 2 victories. They have collected just 12 points all belted. This is one more than the record lowest points tally in the Premier League history set by Derby County in 2007-08 campaign. The Saints coming into this one on the back of losing their last ever men's game at Gunson Park against Everton last weekend due to their first half brace scored by Senegal international attacker Alman Idi. Mikel Arteta's side, Arsenal, have once again gone trophyless this season, and that is likely to have a change next season. The Gunners embarking upon the big summer transfer window following a 3rd successive second place finish in the Premier League, but they have earned themselves what was actually a much needed win in the league last weekend as they defeated Newcastle United by a goal to nil at the Emirates Stadium last week, thanks to a second half goal scored by England international midfielder Declan Rice. Right, Southampton have been a lot steadier, much more risk advanced under the inherited manager of the former Stockport County boss Simon Russ, but who's in the second stint in charge this season after sacks of Russell Martin and Ivan Jurek. Arsenal head down to the South Coast with next season in mind, but they want to finish with a flourish, and a comfortable Gunners victory is to be expected at St Mary's. This will be straightforward. I think Arsenal win 3-0 in my opinion. Right, here we go. Right then. Ipswich versus West Ham. Graham Potter have endured a difficult first few months as West Ham United boss as the Irons finish off their forgettable campaign against the already relegated Ipswich Town this weekend. Ipswich Town aren't showing much fight as they head into the Championship, with Tractor Boys coming into this one on the back of their 23rd defeat of the Premier League campaign, suffering a 2-0 loss to Leicester City at the Kim Powell Stadium last weekend. The Salford-based outfit conceded goals to Jamie Vardy and Kirsty McTee in that game to mean they have now collected just 2 points from their last 7 matches. Their squad does seem well set for a rebuild ahead of their return to the Championship next season. For Graham Potter, replaced former Spain and Real Madrid boss Juman Lopetegui in mid-January as West Ham United drift towards the end of the campaign with just 3 victories in Potter's League in the last few months, sitting 15th in a poor bottom half of the Premier League. The Irons' final game at the London Stadium this season saw them beaten by a 2-1 by the top 5 chasing Nottingham Forest last weekend. And with Jarrett Bowen scoring an excellent consolation after goals from Morgan Gibbs-White and Nicolo Milakovic for Nero Espirito Santos Forest. Ipswich Town have been entertaining to watch this season, but even after back-to-back promotions meant any chance of survival was limited this year, but it has still been a disappointing end to the campaign. But they go down with a whimper, but they face a West Ham side that themselves, though, have endured something of a miserable season, and Ipswich sending off their return to the top flight with a victory would not be a major surprise, but I'm sitting with the draw. I'm sitting with the draw. Right, Tottenham Hotspur versus Brighton. Tottenham Hotspur will be celebratory mode as they take on European chasing Brighton and Hove Albion at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on the final day of the campaign. Tottenham Hotspur ended their 17-year drought in midweek, as Ange Postecoglou has said he's always does something in his second season, as they defeated Manchester United by 1-0 in their Europa League final. Congratulations to Spurs winning, becoming Europa League champions as the Sam Mays in the Bilbao the other day. And again, that typified was the woeful seasons of the whole of both sides, with very little identity, urgency or overall quality. It was Spurs who prevailed from the 4th time over United this season. Thanks to Brandon Johnson's late in the first half, all belted they may be Luke Shaw own goal. For Brighton, if Chelsea defeats Real Biters in the final for the Europa Conference League in midweek, but finished 7th with a defeat to Nottingham Forest on the final day of the Premier League campaign, then 8th in the top flight will qualify for the Europa Conference League. But Vatvium Herzler's Seagulls are the side that occupied 8th in the Premier League at the moment, thanks to an excellent run of form that continued last week with a 3-2 defeat of champions Liverpool at the Amex Stadium, thanks to a Jack Hillswood winning goal. Tottenham Hotspur have been brilliant to watch this season, but generally poor and inefficient in terms of getting results. But however, they are European trophy winners now. It could well be a now fine farewell for Postecoglou as they sit 17th in the Premier League, but Brighton will go to North London with hope of securing Europa Conference League football if Chelsea do indeed lose and comfortable, all belted potentially fun, and Brighton's victory is to be expected at the home of the Europa League wings, but I'm going for a bit of a fun, 2-2. I'm going a bit of fun here to say 2-all draw. Right. Let's move on to Liverpool versus Crystal Palace. Liverpool have been crowned champions for a few weeks now. They will lift the Premier League trophy at the end of their game against FA Cup winners Crystal Palace this week. Liverpool have collected just solitary point from their last from their 3 matches since being crowned champions of England for a 20th time in their 3-1 loss to Chelsea and a 2-2 draw with Arsenal, being followed up by a defeat of Brighton Hove Albion at the Amex Stadium last week. So the Reds took an early lead down on the South Coast last week via Harvey Elliott before Janze Jore equalises midway through the first half, and then Dominic Szoboszlai re-established their lead before the break from Caro Montina and Jack Sherwood won the game for the Seagulls. As for Crystal Palace will be playing in Europa League next season after they won their first ever major honour last weekend by defeating Manchester City by 0-0 in the final of the FA Cup at the Wembley Stadium last weekend. Since then, the Eagles have not turned it for the summer. Instead, produced an impressive and entertaining performance to defeat Wolverhampton Wanderers by 4-2 in midweek, thanks to a brace from Eddie Nketiah as well as Ben Chilwell and Uche Eze's goals. Right, this is a weird one at Anfield, but this is the league champions facing the cup winners, with each other's next competitive meeting being against each other in August in the Community Shield at Wembley. Both sides will be sneaking to finish the historic seasons with a flourish, but it should be some fun for the neutral, especially given how they have approached games since their respectful achievements. But I think Liverpool should have a little bit too strong. I'm going for Liverpool 3-1. And then next, Manchester United versus Aston Villa. Manchester United have been woeful throughout the campaign, and that continued in midweek as they finish off the 2024 campaign with a visit of the top 5 chasing Aston Villa. Right, it has been a miserable season for Manchester United. They're coming into this one of a back of a continuation of that. They suffered a 1-0 loss to Tottenham Hotspur in the final of the Europa League, St Mains in Bilbao, Basque country on the other day. The Red Devils could finish season as low as 17th, quite astonishingly, with just 2 victories inside 90 minutes in their last 13 matches across all competitions, both coming against Athletic Club in the semi-finals of their Europa League earlier this month. And as for Aston Villa, Unai Emery has done a sensational job in charge of Aston Villa, and the Villains will qualify for the Champions League if they win at Old Trafford and one of Chelsea or Newcastle United drop points and Manchester City lose on the final day of the campaign. They most recently defeated Tottenham Hotspur by 2-0 at Villa Park on the penultimate match of the day of the campaign last week, thanks to goals by Eze Kuzar and Benunke Karama. They have now won 15 of their last 18 matches across all competitions. Right, Manchester United have been one of the worst teams in England throughout this season, if not for a bit of their side and weaknesses of the bottom 3. They could and perhaps should have been involved in a relegation battle probably this season. They now face a slick and organised Aston Villa side that they are in good form. They have a bit of motivation to go and win and potentially win comfortably. So a comfortable Villa victory is to be expected at Old Trafford on the final day. Right, let's move on to Newcastle versus... Am I going to move on to Newcastle versus Everton, or that big game between Chelsea and Nottingham Forest? Right. Oh, Newcastle. Right. Come on. Right. Pure as simple. Right, Newcastle will qualify for the Champions League if they beat Everton at St James's Park on the final day of the campaign after Everton said goodbye to Goodison Park last week. Eddie Howe's Newcastle United coming into this one of a back of a 1-0 defeat to runner-ups Arsenal at the Emirates Stadium on the penultimate match of the day of the campaign last season, with winning goal scored by England international midfielder Declan Rice. But the Magpies have enjoyed extremely impressive season with an EFL Cup triumph, defeating Liverpool in the final at Wembley Stadium in March, and now in an excellent position to finish the top 5, securing Champions League football for next season. As for Everton said goodbye to Goodison Park for men's team last weekend ahead of their move to the Hill Dixonson Stadium at the Bramley Moor Docks next season, but they gave it a winning send-off for the Sun of Merseyside. But David Moyes' Toffees could firmly in Colster's in the middle of the table, defeated Southampton by 2-0, with the first goals scored by Senegal international attacker Almal and Die, and leaving them unable to go or higher than 13th in the Premier League table. Right, Newcastle United may have well be without their key man Alexander Isak for this one, but even with the agency and injury prone Callum Wilson starting to be between wingers and Anthony Gordon and Harvey Barnes, they shouldn't be too concerned. And Everton is one of the few teams in the Premier League who have been official intensities, but to play for this weekend they have sit firmly 13th place, and Newcastle should get themselves over the line upon the tier side. But I'm going for Newcastle to win 2-0. And then all eyes on the big game between Forest and Chelsea. For me, it will be a straight shootout. A straight shootout. A straight shootout. A straight shootout. Right, Nottingham Forest needs results to go their way, but could squeeze themselves into the top 5 against the fellow competitor for the Champions League qualification, Chelsea, if other results goes their way as well. But not big game. But Nottingham Forest have wobbled in the last couple of months, in both in the Premier League and the FA Cup. But Nuno Espirito Santo side have pushed them back towards the Champions League spots after a 2-1 defeat of West Ham United at the London Stadium last weekend. Forest took the lead with the 11th minute via England international midfield Morgan Gibbs-White, before Serbian international defender Nikola Mokakovic making a 2-0 win away through the second half, with Jarrett Bowen then scoring a late consolation for the Hammers. And for Chelsea into the Europa Conference League final in Wallachum in Warsaw in Poland in a few days, when the Blues takes on Real Biters in their first and foremost priority throughout the season has been claimed a top 5 spot in the Champions League qualification this year. The Blues recovered from their recent 2-0 loss to Newcastle United at St James's Park a couple of weeks ago to edge past a poor Manchester United by 1-0 at Stamford Bridge last weekend, thanks to a second half strike from Spain international defender Marc Calera. Right, Nottingham Forest will have a miraculous atmosphere behind them as they sneak return to Europe's elite competition. No matter what happens, they'll be in Europe next season, but they'll be aware that they could be a day that fulfills a fairy tale season. But they face the Chelsea side that have been getting results throughout this calendar year, with the performances declining. But further, Enzo Maresca's gets into this tension at Stamford Bridge. While it may not be enough, but it wouldn't surprise me to see Forest force victory at the City ground. And I got a sneaky feeling that Nottingham Forest could do it, you know. I'm going for Forest 2-1. That's my predictions then for the Premier League Week 38 predictions. Leave on your comments below. And my top 5 is Liverpool first, Arsenal second, Man City third, Newcastle fourth, and possibly Aston Villa in fifth. But we shall see on Sunday. Thank you guys for supporting the channel throughout the season. Leave on your comments below, and we'll see you in the next one. Enjoy your summer, guys. Bye. Have a great half term.